Welcome to another great week here at Beyond the Score podcast. I am happy to be your co-host. Josh, are you just as happy as I am to be doing this thing every single week?
What kind of question is that? Of course, man.
I know. I
Welcome
like
back,
asking. I
everyone.
like
How we
asking
doing?
silly questions once in a while. If there's a problem with that, so what? It's life. It is what it is. That's me. I ask the silly stuff because I'm a silly person. What can I
Oh, yeah,
say?
absolutely. But yeah, life's good, man. Life's good.
Life is good. I know the two beautiful little babies, they're doing well too. I saw them on FaceTime earlier. Well, I saw one of them on FaceTime earlier. The other one was taking a nap. She probably had a long day after school today. So listen, I miss
Yep.
those days coming home from school and just taking a little hour to 2 hour nap, not having any problems in the world. Just, come home. I'm going to sleep till 5, 6 o'clock. I'll wake up and enjoy it. Now it's like, if you did that, you're missing out on so much and it just can't happen in today's life. We're too old for that type of stuff. But anyways, let's get into the nitty gritty. We got to recap. We got to go over our picks from next week. We got a lot of things to uncover, so let's get into the details of things. I'll start with my picks from last week. Tampa Bay +9 against Kansas City. Cash that. They hit.
Ching.
They hit. The game went into overtime, and when the game goes into overtime, it's good. It's a one-score game at that point. That's gonna, end in either a 6-point game or a 3-point game. It doesn't matter at that point. So I knew that once overtime happened, we were good. I felt confident once there was like a few minutes left in the game. But the way the tempo of the game flowed, it seemed like this one was going to be a lock. Tampa had a lead at one point in the second half, so I thought it would be a real tough time for Kansas City's offense to just roll over on this defense and just put up a 20-0 score on them. Let's just say in that second half and make it an unrealistic score. So the
Yeah.
+9, it started at 9.5. By the time we gave it to you guys, it was +9, so it did move, and they won by 6 points, and we lock it and we move on to the next week. Josh, why don't you share with everyone you had 2 picks actually last week. Why don't we go over those too?
Yeah, I mean, first off, Brock Bowers was not as involved in the game as I thought, but the game, the result of the game was what happens when you eliminate a team's best player. The Raiders got smoked. And then when you go to I took Patriots +3.5. We love overtime here. I mean, we had the Patriots go to overtime as well to lose on a field goal, but we were money. I mean, it was a little bit sweaty in terms of we had the ball for some of overtime, but then once the Titans got the ball, it's hard to think that more than 4 touchdowns were going to be had in this game. So I'm glad that we were on the winning side of that. 2-1 on the week, 8-12 on the year. We're climbing a little bit, but we will get that to 500 and above by the end of the year. Best believe that, right, Harry?
Listen, next week we're gonna give you guys 2 winning picks, so make it 10-2, but 10-12 by the end of next week, and we can go right into that. I mean, I just actually quickly before we get into that, on your picks with Brock Bowers, for instance, someone like him who you expect who's going to have a game every single week is not going to have a game every single week because the
Yeah.
defense is going to make the adjustments. Devontae Adams, who was out the last couple of weeks, wasn't really a part of that offense anyway. So it wasn't like the number one option was gone. He's been the number one option really,
Yeah.
with especially with Gardner Minshew at times. You saw Aiden O'Connell out there, but I expect that play if you had 64.5 for the rest of the season. More often than not, that number is going to be on the overside because he's such a special player, and the Raiders know that they have to get him involved in the offense for them to have any opportunity at winning ball games. Whether that's what they want to do or not, go at this stage in their season, it's that's to be determined. But if they want to win games, you could expect that they're going to be getting him a lot more
Yeah, but
involved in games.
you also hate when you take a line like that and he goes 5 for 45 with the tutty and had 8 targets, so you know you left money on the table with there. But, we do this part for fun. We're looking for ones that stand out, and we move on to next week.
Well,
I'm
speaking of
gonna
ones that stand out, let's go to the ones that stood out for us for next week. I'll start with my picks. I have the Bengals +6 at Baltimore. The reason I like this is because they played only a couple of weeks ago, and that game went into overtime, and it was a shootout between the quarterbacks. I expect, this divisional game to go high, whether it's scoring, throwing from Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, just getting their offenses going. these two are two of the best quarterbacks in football, at least top five. Whether you want to blame Joe Burrow for the Bengals' problems or not, it's really up to you. But the truth is, he's an MVP consideration with the numbers he's put up so far this season. He's played some amazing football, and the defense has really been the problem in football. Of course, it takes 53 players to get the job done. But I really like this. I think the divisional game, it's a much needed win for the Bengals. So they're going to bring out their best playbooks, best play calls, and try to get this done. And try to win out a game here. But listen, if they lose and they lose by 5 points or less, it's still a win in our eyes. So I think this one's going to be a really good one for next week. I expect us to improve our overall record. And Josh, you have a really good line too that I also really liked. What is that line?
Yeah, just going into the Bengals and the Ravens a little bit. When you look at the over the reason why it doesn't shoot up from last game is because I don't think it's realistic to think that the second time they play, each team will only have one turnover. I do think that divisional games are tough, and usually you don't have a whole year to make an adjustment. Like when you play most teams, you got to make an adjustment in a couple weeks, and so I expect some turnovers. I expect a I don't want to say sloppy play because they seem to give us great games. And yeah, I mean, I don't think that you have any reason to think that that game won't be close. But for me, I'm going with the Jets and the Cardinals under 46 and a half. Three of the last four Cardinals home games have gone under, and that includes the game against the Lions. The line is pick 'em, so I think they expect the Jets to be in this game, and I do too. But in with that, the Jets are averaging 19 points per game in their last five. So I think that the defense is going to get the job done for the Jets to keep it close. And I think we'll see whoever has the ball last wins. What do you think? You think it'll be that close?
Well, with going to the Jets offense, they've struggled, and it's mostly been because of that offensive line. I'm actually surprised that they weren't able to bolster that up. It's not an easy thing to make a trade in the NFL happen, especially at the deadline. But when you have a team that's situated around a 40-year-old quarterback, and you have Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson as your primary two options, you really got to give him the best opportunity to get them the ball, right? And him and them is Aaron Rodgers to Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams. Last week, we saw them play much better, obviously at home against Houston. Now, this week against Cardinals, we're a team that, Kyler Murray is going to run around a lot and make some plays happen out of nothing. You got to be a lot better when it comes to efficiency on the offense. And so I expect that if the Jets want to win this game, yes, the defense is going to have to hold Arizona to under 20 points. If not, then it's going to be a struggle. The game could go over with, I'm sorry, the game could still stay under with the fact that the Jets offense won't be able to do much if they can't protect their quarterback. And I think that's going to be one of the most important things. You got to protect Aaron Rodgers, or else this game is going to be really sloppy for the Jets offense. And other than that, I think it's a strong line though. 46 and a half. I could see the Jets taking this 23-20 relatively easily, and that gives you about 3.5 points, a 3-point cushion right there. And it could be also a game where now Hassan Reddick, who's played a little bit more now and is getting a little bit more reps under his belt, has a big game and really is able to contain Kyler Murray and keep the Cardinals offense from exploding on the Jets defense. And that is more of a realistic thing that I see happening. I expect the Jets to win. When I saw the lines, actually the Cardinals were favored by a point because they're home. I'm guessing they give these home teams a lot more credit than they sometimes deserve. But I think it's going to be a good game to watch, so I'll definitely have it on my TV, or at least part of the 4 games that I have on my screen on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I think that's a cool thing. And I also think that if the Cardinals are going to win, they're going to need to force turnovers and keep the Jets under 20 points, I'd say, which honestly is doable based on their last five. And I think that when you look at the work of the Arizona defense and their team, actually, not just their defense, they're 5-4, 3-2 at home. The Jets are 3-6, 1-4 away. So we're going to see if the Cardinals are awake for this, or if the Jets are, I don't even want to say a live dog because they're not underdogs, but just if they're ready for it.
I love it how you give everyone the breakdown of what people's records are right off the bat, and like it's amazing. Just because sometimes I don't have that information too, and then you just put it out there what their home and away splits are, and it's super vital. And this is why you're so amazing at what we do here. It's part of
I
your
appreciate you, man.
50%, let's just say, contributions is your side of the knowledge, just having these things like boom, boom, pow type of thing, and I love it. And so, we're gonna follow these games really closely. this Sunday. It's going to be an eventful week for a lot of these teams who need some really big wins, specifically the Jets and specifically the Bengals. So it'll be a good one, and let's go 10-12 after this week, and
Let's do it.
after that we'll be able to bring ourselves to even 500, and you can only expect to be at least 500 and something like this. So from there, though, we shoot up. So we'll see what happens. We do have some sideline stories that we got to uncover. These sideline stories are going to be the trades that have just happened. And the two major trades, let's start with the first one that did happen. Marshon Lattimore, your Saints, after a couple of years of talking about potentially moving him, finally move him, and they move him to the Baltimore Ravens, a team that desperately needs help in their secondary. What I will say, though, is I feel like the Saints did get a decent return, a third and a fourth round pick. I think that's very, very much needed for a team that's, whether or not they're rebuilding or not, because they obviously have some pieces to send them off to the next level. But when you're holding on to guys like Alvin Kamara and you're holding on to other pieces on your offense that you expect to help you through a season, then you show that they're not in a full rebuild mode, but they're still building up draft capital for that next season. If they can draft the right guy in the third round, could take them to the next level next season, right? And so that's why these types of moves are needed. Marshon Lattimore obviously was a huge part of the Saints' defense, drafted by the Saints, and really just off the bat was an explosive, amazing cornerback. You obviously have seen him a lot more than I have, and I'm certain you could appreciate a lot of the great things he's done for your team. But what do you think he's going to be able to help mostly with this, Ravens secondary that's been lacking a lot?
First off, I want to give a little shout out to Marshon Lattimore for always coming to work, always being ready to play when he was healthy enough to. He was a dog out there. They would always avoid throwing the ball to him, and he would made Mike Evans look really sorry sometimes. And I'm gonna miss those fights. Um, but love Sean. I think that once the Saints the first 2 weeks saw that I had faith in them and played well, then 40% of the roster got injured, and they're like, "Oh, okay, we can't make him look good there, so we'll trade him to a team that he had making the playoffs." And I think that all jokes aside, I think that that's something that was really cool. But for Washington to get a true number one, top five in the league corner, I mean, you get it for that price because of the cap hit, and I'm not really sure how that all works. Where the Saints still somehow have 31 million of his next year. I don't really understand that. Maybe you could explain that to me and our viewers a little more. But I think that it's a great fit. I think that that solidifies a lot for the defense, makes everyone else's job a little bit easier for a team that's already leading the division on a real run. And I got two 75-cent champions parlays that have them winning the Super Bowl, but that's just a 75 cent. It's $1.50 total invested in a couple different lines.
Well, I will have to say, this is a trade that the Ravens definitely did need, and Marshon Lattimore is special in what he does for the secondaries, especially what he's done specifically in New Orleans. So, that explosiveness that they need on the defense in Baltimore, he's going to bring it. And now another thing that I do want to mention is they trade him from the NFC South to the I'm sorry, from the from the NFC South to
You're right.
the AFC North. They don't want to see him ever again. So if they can
Wait,
avoid him
wait,
as much as
wait,
possible, they
where
will.
North? What are you talking about? AFC North? You're talking about the wrong trade.
Am I talking about what do you mean I'm talking about the wrong trade?
We're still talking about Marshawn.
Yeah, he went to the Ravens, right?
No, he went to the Commanders, bro.
Oh my God, I am talking. I don't know why I've been having this error, and you know what? I am sorry to my viewers for my nonsense that I'm spewing
You're
out
good,
here
bro.
right
Yeah, I
now.
know, I know, I
But
know
I've been
how you
referring
excited.
to the Ravens, and I've known for this whole time that he's been going to the Commanders.
Let me just tell you, I know how excited you get to come to this place every week, and I know that you put in that work, and you give me a lot of credit, but you deserve a lot of credit too. And we're working hard, and we're getting all the knowledge combined. We together we get all the information needed to put on a good show. So
I
Saints to Commanders. I know you knew it,
appreciate
but
you.
sometimes leading the show a little bit, you move a little quickly because you're excited, and that's
Well,
okay.
let me take it back a step for a second here. Let's go back and delve into the Commanders a little bit because that's where he's actually being sent off to. Tre'Davious White, who we'll get into afterwards, is the one that's being sent to Baltimore. But specifically for Marshawn Lattimore getting sent to the Commanders, huge move, right? Commanders, a team that 6-2, sitting on top of the division, they expect nothing less than making a deep playoff run at this point with seeing what they have. When they go and make a move like this, and they add a piece like this to a defense that's pretty good but not great, it's a huge move. And so Marshawn Lattimore is something that luckily, we've played the Commanders already twice, and I don't have to see him again this season. But I'm probably going to have to see him again in the next couple of years because he's, I don't know do you know better what his contract details are on one more year after this one? And is that why he's
I
getting the
thought.
dead cap at 31 million kept on New Orleans?
Well, I know they definitely have him for at least next year. I think it might be one more, but it's definitely at least one more.
So we can get quickly. I mean, when it comes to the dead cap that's involved, that lump sum of money that New Orleans is going to be taking on, it's part of the trade that you make happen, right? And it's something that is the team's responsibility because there's no way the Commanders are going to take that on and give you a third and a fourth round pick. So for the Saints, they don't mind eating that dead cap and holding him over for another season and then exploring other options to spend money after that because it doesn't make sense for them to just trade him for nothing, right? They have to get something in return. And if that means paying a majority of his salary next season for him to go to a team that's like the Commanders, you got to get what you got to do what you got to do.
So
And
two
so,
more years, but I think he had an opt out, but I assume that part of the deal was that he had to sign on. So 2 more years after this year. That's what I thought.
well, then I have to see him four times over the next 2 years, and I'm not looking too thrilled about that. And I'm not
Mm.
going to thank the Saints for doing this because it definitely hurts my team's future chances. And with Daniel Jones as quarterback, you can only expect that. Honestly, it's a safe bet to take Marshawn Lattimore picks against the Giants over the next 2 years if Daniel Jones is their quarterback. The truth is, though, whether he's going to be their quarterback or not, that's going to be up in the air because I highly doubt they're going to keep him around after this season. At least it just doesn't make sense. We're not going to get into the Giants.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But let's go back into that next trade. Tre'Davious White. Why don't you start it off? Where did he get traded to again? Because I already forgot.
He went from the Rams to the Ravens. I think that this is a move that I felt like the Rams have been overachieving a little bit, even though they've been not great. So moving him to get something for him is a good move, but I think that also just exposes them. But it gives the Ravens that much more of an opportunity to make a Super Bowl run, like I also said.
Well, Tre'Davious White is a fantastic cornerback too. I mean, when he was in Buffalo, it was his best version of himself. When he was with the Rams, he was still really good, and that's obviously why a team like Baltimore really needed him. And in terms of the return, they only traded a fifth round pick, and in return, they also got a sixth round pick. So they only lost a spot in the draft, and they got a pretty good cornerback. I mean, he's not obviously Marshawn Lattimore; he's a little older, but you can expect his knowledge of the game, his experience so far is going to really guide those younger, defensive backs in Baltimore to the next level. Obviously, his presence is going to be a lot, and I expect that in a defense that works so well together schematically, that his numbers are going to even look better. I mean, I don't think he has a pick this season so far. He might finish with a couple of picks on the season, with
Yeah, now not being the one guy you avoid.
right, exactly. And so I think this is going to be a great move for him. He's on a team that's, got ambitions of making deep runs and, possibly making it to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl. So I think he's going to play his best version of himself. And I think, like you said, there's going to be the teams that are going to avoid throwing him the ball in that direction. But there's also going to be teams who realize that if they avoid him, well, they're going to be throwing into another situation that's not going to be so ideal. So I expect
Yeah.
his production to increase in this defense. And I think this was a great trade for Baltimore as well. And so, we'll see how that affects, my +6 on the Bengals this coming up week. So hopefully not too bad. Hopefully Joe Burrow doesn't throw in his direction too much. But, I also think that Joe Burrow is on a different class of quarterback where, even when he makes mistakes, he's able to kind of minimalize how bad they are. And, we'll see how they go. But anything else you wanted to mention regarding these trades that have happened?
Just that I think it's important to remember that Tre'Davious White's contract expires at the end of the year, so not giving up much just for a couple games of him and playoff games. So I think that it's a good move as well.
It's a crazy thing though because in baseball, for instance, when you make these 2-month trades, right, a player's going to be a free agent, you're giving up a lot more than what these NFL teams have to give up for a 3 month rental, right? We've seen
Yeah.
players similar caliber to Tre'Davious White in the MLB version getting traded to a team that's going to make a playoff run, where they're giving up their number 5 prospect, a major league player, a utility man, sometimes a reliever, and they're giving up a package of players. And in the NFL world, you don't need to have those types of returns. And the way it works in the NFL, financially speaking, is very different than the way it works in baseball. And so, when you're a team like the Ravens, you can go and kind of snip out some of these players and really not give up a lot. I mean, to give up a 5th-round pick and return also a 6th-round pick in return, for them, this is like fantastic. I mean, their expectation is going far, and I think this is the type of move that, sets them apart and definitely helps them close the gap with, let's say, Kansas City, for at least winning the Super Bowl purposes.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, why don't we move on? We have a fan question. Ben, why don't you do us the honors of revealing who and what they are wanting us to discuss?
I'm sure everyone's gonna be shocked.
I'm a little shocked too. It's been 3 weeks in a row, but I love it.
Of course, I'd be more than happy. Can you guys? Oh, let me get I'll let you guys see me real quick. So the fan mail this week is from none other than Matt. Matt has a question for us today. So, are athletes starting to get greedy with how much they think they're worth? Is it the agents, or are sports caps just not keeping up with inflation / demand for players?
I'll start.
Harry, you start this time.
It's very case by case because we've seen so many different things happening in the NFL world, baseball, basketball, when it comes to contracts and free agents and negotiations and things like that. I believe a player should definitely do what they need to do to capitalize however much they can get. No questions asked. What Aaron Judge did a couple of years ago to make sure he got a bigger bag from the Yankees, I'm all for it. Why? Because they are trying to get their money from these multi-billionaires who believe that they're worth what they're doing. And if they're not there, guess what? These billionaires aren't going to be making the same amount of money without this player on that team, right? Jersey sales, marketing, ticket sales, whatever it is. Now we have situations that happen where a player's making demands and they're not showing up to practice and they're not really being a team player, making a fuss, and it's not really in the positive light about your negotiation process, and it kind of gives you the bad look. For instance, a lot of the times in the NFL, we see it when the player is still under contract and they still have another year left and they're not reporting to camp because they're dealing with trying to get the bag. And you see so many people who say, well, yeah, they should get the bag. I agree. CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, all these guys, get your bag. But if that means costing your team by not showing up and being fully prepared by the first game of the NFL season, just like CeeDee Lamb, because he was not ready the first couple of weeks of the season. And guess what? He hasn't even been performing to the expectations that the Cowboys need from him, right? And partially that's, with Dak getting him the ball, but that's another conversation. The truth is, you have someone like Juan Soto now as a free agent. The number is going to be anywhere from $600 to $700 million he's going to get. Whether that's from the Yankees, the Dodgers, or the Mets, he's going to get that type of money. He's going to get an offer for $620. He's going to go take it to the other team. They're going to give him $640. He's going to go bring it to the Yankees. They're going to give him $660. That's what's going to happen. And that's happened forever because that's part of the negotiation process. If I'm an athlete, of course I have an agent who's going to represent me for my best interests, and he's going to do everything. That's the one thing where you get into and you're like, don't let the agent screw things up. And we've seen that happen, especially recently in baseball with Scott Boras, who's one of the most prolific agents in baseball. But he had a season this past season where he botched a lot of deals happening and lost a lot of clients because of it. That's where you got to make sure you have the right representation, is going to look out for the right interests, is going to be able to capitalize your market because you have a lot of value to your team other than just going to swing a bat, throw a ball, shoot a ball, whatever it is. You are selling jerseys. You are going on commercials. You are representing this team by putting on the hat. You are a Yankee. You are a whatever you are, a Giant or a Knick or whatever it is. that is very important. And so I don't think it's about being greedy. I just think it's about the way you go about it needs to be the right way. If you're a free agent and you want to get your bag and you're going to go down the necessary steps to negotiate between 4 teams, I don't care if you don't want to give a hometown discount. I don't necessarily blame you nowadays. Maybe a few years ago that was a whole thing. You get the hometown discount. That's kind of gone at this point. Nobody gets hometown discounts, unless it's a couple of pennies on the dollar, if anything. But that's long gone, and I don't expect players to settle for hometown discounts. They want to get paid. The world is a crazy place. People need money, and so you don't know what the dollar is going to happen in 10 years from now. So you get what you can now, and you go on from there.
Yeah, I mean, first off, just imagine being Juan Soto, opening up Google and seeing Juan Soto projected 13 years, $611 million contract. Now, if in your mind you think you're worth a little more than that, fine, but just you have people writing articles about you being worth 60% of $1 billion as a player. That's very impressive. I had to give a little prologue to what I'm saying, but about Scott Boras, I definitely think that he's a prime example of when an agent goes wrong, but also when an agent goes right. Because I agree with you, he lost a lot of clients, but that would be a lot of clients to most other agents, but to him, that's just a drop in the bucket. There's a reason they keep going back to him, and there's a reason why they don't oversee what he does, because he's in the players' interest and he makes them happy. And in terms of greed, I'd say absolutely not, because all of the money that comes into the league, I definitely think that the players deserve a cut. I mean, I think that the wrong thing to do is to go in the media and say, I want to be here for life. I want to be here for life. I want to be here for life. And then you don't give the team the chance to match the contract. You don't stay, whatever, whatever. I'm all for, like, you going and making sure everyone gets their bag for how hard they work to get to there. But Juan Soto made a perfect example of how to go about it, because I will be sad if he leaves, but it's not because of anything he did. He set the expectation properly that he wants to get in his bag and he deserves it. He showed Washington that he felt like he was worth more than that. He felt like um any preseason negotiation was not even worth doing because he wanted to focus on this year, and then they wanted to hit free agency. Fine. Then you look at the big picture and you see that there are guys like him doing it like that, and there are guys doing it the wrong way. And I don't really think that it's an inflation or demand thing, because when you look at, again, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Bryce Harper, you look at these contracts, and there's plenty of other contracts, Yamamoto, Otani. Um, you look at it and you say, when we looked to go to the World Series game, the starting price to get in the pre-sale was $980 to not even have a chair. 50,000 seats at $1,000 is $50 million for the team. So if a team's gonna make that off of one playoff game, you bet your ass that if I'm an asset for the team, I'm making sure I'm getting my fair share, because the teams in the playoffs, they don't they don't give the players that. They get a playoff share, a cut. Couple $1 million would be nice for you and me to get, don't get me wrong, but for them it's a drop in the bucket. Word of the day. Um, but I think that when you look at the big picture, you need to make these moves with the intent to make a championship, because in one of those games at Yankee Stadium, the Yankees made back Juan Soto's salary this year. So when you look at the big picture, which I don't know, I feel like what I'm saying makes me look like I'm going back around in circles, but I do have a point to what I'm saying. But I think that when you look at all these players that want to make sure they get their bag, then so many players, when they get their bag, they fall off because they've gotten out of their routines of what made them great. They went away from spring training, they went away from training camp, they went away from everything that got them to be worth that. And then now teams are starting to say, we're going to wait with you. And of course, CD Lamb got his. A lot of people end up getting theirs when the season starts. And of course, a team's going to struggle without their star player. But when you look at the big picture, when you're a free agent, you need to know what you bring to that team, and what you need to understand that this team may be able to do it fine, but to have me I am a luxury asset to a team if I'm Juan Soto, if I'm Shohei Ohtani, if I'm even Christian Walker. Like he's not going to get $100 million, but he's going to get a very nice bag for being a very good player. I bring value to them, and to make them that much better, to get them that World Series game. That's really what it's all about, getting to the World Series. I mean, of course, as fans, we wanna win the World Series, but the Yankees got their 3 home games. They got their World Series money. They're not pleased with the outcome, but I'm sure Hal is just fine.
When it comes to specifically with Juan Soto, 100%, right? The Yankees made so much money and they didn't even end up having to pay his salary this season, truly, because he got 31 million and they made $50 million from just one playoff game, right? And they had 3 home games, so that's 150 million. Here's another thing. Shohei Ohtani, when he signed that $700 million deal with the Dodgers, in the first 6 to 8 weeks, the Dodgers recouped about $200 million from jersey sales, from season tickets, all coming in, from marketing, from all that stuff. They got that right back.
That's
It's
a
an
cool nugget. I
investment.
like that.
It's an investment that you're making, and it's not only going to result in what they do on the field. We know that. We know that it also matters what they're going to do off the field, how they're going to represent the brand, the team, everything, all that. And Juan Soto did it perfectly. He said, I'd love to be a Yankee. Why not? Who wouldn't want to be a Yankee? But we're going to talk about it at the right time. We're not going to talk about it in the season. And, if there's going to be a deal to be made, it's going to be made. And he said it perfectly. He just like you said, he set the expectation for everyone to understand the process in which this is going to happen. And so, if he leaves, he didn't sit there and say, I'm a Yankee forever, you know, count me in for the next 15 years. He wants to go through the process. Now, it's part of the game. It's part of doing it. He wants to secure the most amount of money, and saying those things also leads to that too, right? You say those things, you quiet down the Yankees, you quiet down everyone. They have to wait until the end of the season. He just had one of the best seasons of his career, and he's 26 years old. And he turned down $430 million 3 years ago from the Nationals, and they said, all right, you don't want 430, we're going to trade you. And he got traded to the Padres, and he played great there, and he got traded to the Yankees, and he played great here. And guess what? That 430 went to 530, which went to 630 now, which could be more than 630 for all we know at this point. It could very well be 650. And, you just hope that a deal is going to happen, and you hope that it's not going to be in a scenario where you're like, they shouldn't have done it that way. They obviously went down the wrong way, and we don't expect that with someone like Juan Soto. We see it a lot more happening in the NFL world, which kind of disgusts me with a lot of these players. I'm like, if you're going to fight for a bag a year left on your deal, it's like, what are you talking about? Performance, you got to perform to get the money. And you're saying you performed well. Well, you're already getting paid multi-millions of dollars on the first 4 years of your deal. Now you're at the end of the year 3 and you're telling me you want to get an extension now. Well, there's risk in that for the team too, right? There's risk. What if you get injured? What if you don't perform to the expectation? Now we just gave you a huge contract and you're putting up, average numbers on your 4th season. What now? Right? So it's like, who do you side with in those scenarios when you're talking about in the NFL? I personally normally would side with the owner. Now, I never side with Jerry Jones because he's terrible, and I think he personally also shouldn't be running his team the way he's running his team. And I think that caused a lot of rifts between, the organization and CeeDee Lamb, but ultimately they got a deal done with a couple of days left in the season. And now, the Cowboys are most likely not going to make the playoffs. And they just spent $120+ million on a receiver that isn't playing like he's worth that contract at this very moment. So it's a double-sided sword, right? And that's the way you got to look at it. It works out sometimes, it doesn't work out sometimes. Sometimes the player, it works out for them, sometimes it works out for the owner, sometimes it doesn't work out for it's so many different possibilities happening with so much money going to these athletes. The truth is, they're going to do what they have to do, the athletes, to capitalize it, and the owners and the teams are going to do what they have to do in order to pay them less or try to get them to take a smaller deal. So, ultimately, we'll bring you guys, whatever happens in terms of these big free agent deals, especially in baseball, since that's what we're going to be seeing a lot of.
And
Nothing
just
to
one more
nothing
thing
to really
to
report as of yet, but
yeah.
once they do come out, we'll definitely bring it to you guys.
Yeah, and one more thing to touch on about the question that we didn't really touch on is that the sports caps They're very meticulous about where they pick them, but baseball is one that we focus on a lot because there is none, and that's just all the more reason that the players sometimes have to hold out more because a team might have to pay double their contract in tax.
Well, here's a part of that question. He's asking if the sports caps are keeping up with inflation. They are. I mean, we just saw that with the NFL. They got a $35 million increase in their, their salary cap, which is a lot of money.
Mhm.
Especially it was
Yeah,
like not even like it was like 6 weeks out from the season starting or preseason starting, and they got hit with an additional $35 million each team. It's a lot of money in the NFL, especially when you're talking about NFL contracts where you can get players on cheaper deals than you could in baseball where there is no cap, and the lower end players in baseball typically still make more money than the lower end players in the NFL. And so it adds up, but at the end of the day, baseball doesn't have a cap like you mentioned. The NFL does, the NHL does, the NBA does, and they do go up every couple of years. You see a rise happening. The NBA salary cap is like $230 million right now. That's a lot of money. You got 15 players on your roster to pay $230 million. Stephen Curry makes $60 million a year, right? He doesn't have a
that's
$600 million
crazy.
contract, but he gets paid $225 million over 4 years. That's crazy. The way the NFL these players are doing it, it's so different too, right? And we'll quickly wrap up after this, but
Yeah,
they sign a lot of these, especially like the superstar players. They sign 1 to 2 year deals with an option because they know that the salary cap is going to keep going up with all the international money coming in and all the advertisements and marketing that's happening, specifically with the NBA, where you see it with LeBron, for instance. Since he came back to Cleveland in 2015, he was signing short deals, 1 to 2 year deals. When he signed that 4 year deal with the Lakers, when he went to the Los Angeles Lakers, it had an opt out after 2 years, which he took. He opted out. He opted out of getting $45 million in 1 year to renegotiate to get him to get $50+ million because there's more money coming into the NBA. Why he doesn't want to leave the money on the NBA in the league? He wants to get it himself. So instead of signing a 5 year, $250 million deal, he's signing 1 year deals with a player option on the second year that's paying him $45 million, that pays him $50 million on the player option, but he declines the player option to get another 2 year deal, one and one, $60 million, and it bumps up to $65 million. It's crazy. Embiid gets getting paid like $70 million a year on like a 4 year deal. It's crazy. These guys are getting paid a lot of money, whether it's upfront or over the course of so long, and you get the guaranteed deal. Like baseball is guaranteed. You get a 12 year deal if you're Soto, 13, 14 years, $600 million off the bat. You're not worried about another contract ever again.
yeah,
It's so insane how different it works in every single sport, but it also is one of the more beautiful things. It's completely different. The financials on how these teams operate, and we're going to give you guys, and Josh and I we'll talk about this. We'll have an episode where we really kind of give you guys a breakdown a little bit more about the
sport by
differences
sport.
sport by sport, how it kind of works, and give you guys some examples of certain players and certain situations of things happening. And so we'll move on with that, Matthew. Thank you so much for that great question. We really appreciate every single question you give us, and you give
Yeah,
us some
much
really good ones
appreciated.
too. I mean, these are really good ones that we can definitely go back and forth with. So
And
look out
Harry,
for our fan mail
one
again, Matt. We're looking forward to the next question.
One more thing about that. When also you'll look overseas and see that some of these aging soccer players, what they make. I don't think people who aren't avid soccer people like me don't realize that you might think you look at Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, Karim Benzema. People might not even know their names who aren't into soccer. I mean, Ronaldo and Neymar would be very surprised, but Benzema. I mean, you look at Cristiano Ronaldo moved there for 173 million a year. So that should Neymar's 86 million a year. Both of
Dude,
these guys were trending down, but it just shows what a player can bring to a league. And when these owners have all this money, there really there really is limitless potential for the money they could make. And then when you add to that the fact that you look at the MLB, you look at the American leagues, you'll never see that type of money. But they're always good. The players will always see what other people are making and what their brand is, and they'll use it as a benchmark to bring themselves a little closer to it.
well, I was gonna say, well, do we even talk about like the whole Messi's contract with Miami? He's got like part ownership in the stake of the team. I mean, like,
That's such a cool contract.
he's also getting paid a ton of money, whether it's from the MLS or not. He's getting revenue from the team. So he's still making a lot of
Yeah.
money. He's already made hundreds of millions of dollars playing. But I remember one of his last deals with PSG was like, he's getting like 160 million a year too, 4 years. It's like 600 million euros, not even dollars, euros. So you could only imagine that's even more dollars than we actually think it is, because what 600
Yeah.
million euros is like 750 million dollars. Crazy numbers, crazy amount of money these guys get paid, but it's because these teams make that money. It's not like they're not, they're just dishing it out. Owners writing a check saying, "Here you go." No, they bring in a ton of revenue and they dish it out to the players. The players get a portion of the revenue. It's all in the collective bargaining. That's another topic to be discussed. And the collective bargaining, if anybody knows, it's quite an interesting, especially for the NFL. But each collective bargaining is very, very interesting, and they're very different collective bargaining agreements amongst all the leagues. But well, let's shift on, Matthew. Thank you again for that great question. Let's get into the basketball world. We gotta talk a little bit about basketball, because it's kind of exciting in our world when it comes to basketball, right? Our teams
Yeah.
are they're pretty good, pretty good. That's my
Yeah.
Larry David impression. Pretty good.
It's a
And
fantastic show.
it's fantastic. Curb Your Enthusiasm, Seinfeld, whatever it is, fantastic. Great actor, great producer. Larry David. Seats open for you, by the way, right over here.
Only
If you ever want to
only
come, I know
person
you're
great enough
you're
to
you're a Jet fan. We're New Yorkers. Come down. Let's make you feel a little bit worse about how your team actually is. Let's get back into the basketball world of things. We're gonna do a little different. You're gonna talk about some East. I'm gonna talk about some West. I'm gonna focus on the Thunder. You're gonna focus on the Cavs. Kind of give us a little scoop down about our teams, but from an unbiased standpoint. It's gonna be a little interesting. Why don't you start
It's gonna be
off? I
fun.
mean, what can you tell us and me and all our viewers about what's happening in the Eastern Conference, and specifically them Cavaliers?
Yeah, let me get you started with the fact that the Cleveland Cavaliers are legit. Um, they are 8-0. They have a very balanced front, and they don't have one of their shooters, which actually I found out from you a little bit before that he hasn't been around, Max Strus. But you got Donovan Mitchell averaging 23, you got Garland averaging 20, Mobley averaging 17 and 8, which I think we spoke about a couple weeks ago that we thought that he was going to be a player to take a nice leap. So I think that that's coming to fruition. And the one thing that I think that you look at the Cavaliers and you see that as a team, they're shooting 41.3% from three without Strus, without arguably their best shooter, their sharpshooter. I mean, of course, they got Spider, but you could debate that in terms of strictly shooting threes. Strus might be better, but it seems like everyone is bought into what they're doing. They are 7-0 against the East. They're 8-0 total. One against the Knicks, two against the Bucks. We'll get into the Bucks another time. It doesn't look like Doc Rivers is the right fit, but we'll talk. Like I said, we'll talk about that another time. Their schedule is set up nicely that they're not really going to be tested again. I mean, they were tested by the Knicks, they were tested by the Bucks. They got the Warriors this week. They got Boston in 2 weeks. Then I don't really see anything tough for them until December because I don't look at Philly as anything without Embiid, and it doesn't look like he's going to be ready by the 13th. I think that when you look at the Cavaliers, you look at a very solid team. When you look at one of those teams that is like a high seed in the Final Four in March Madness, just because they do everything the right way, they execute their shots, they make the plays, they never put themselves in a position to have to, well, not never, but right now, never. But they never put themselves in a position to need to come back or come out of their game. And they have two 7-footers that together are bringing in just about 20 rebounds a game. It's got to be really fun to be a Cavs fan right now. And it's crazy because watching the Thunder all the time, the one thing that I see is seeing two true bigs play so fluidly together. It's a dream of what bringing in iHeart can do for us, even with what we've done. I know you mentioned that we were bringing up the Thunder. That's why I touched on it. But I mean, they're averaging about 10 steals a game. They're really doing it incredibly. They're well coached. Everyone's bought in. Donovan Mitchell came back, and it's like everyone is really happy that he's back. Everyone's playing like they knew that he was the guy they needed. They didn't need to add anyone else. They have pretty much the same exact roster. And I think that it's a very fun time to be a Cavs fan. Number one seed in the East. Celtics are one game behind, but it's a really fun thing to look at. And I want to hear you break down your team a little bit.
Well, it's definitely a fun time to be a Cavs fan. It's also definitely a fun time to be a Thunder fan too. You guys are 8-0 over there, but let's quickly go back into the Cavs. It is, I mean, they're playing great basketball. I love the fact that they kind of kept their core. They didn't really go out and make some major moves, which some people question, like what's so different about this Cavs team. But chemistry I think is super important, especially when you're playing a game like basketball, when you got five guys on the court, and you got to be fluid out there. And I think the Cavs are playing really great basketball together. Donovan Mitchell at times has not needed to be out there. I mean, he's definitely not playing nearly as many minutes this season as he's played over his first couple of years in Cleveland. That's a good sign, right? I mean, when your team's
Yeah.
playing well and they're blowing out their opponents, and your best player can rest for the last 7 to 8 minutes of the game, it's huge. But Darius Garland, he's really been the guy, in my opinion, who's taken the next step. I mean, last game against the Bucks, it was back and forth, no Giannis, and he was just off the rails. He put up 39 points, and he was incredible to watch. And I really love Darius Garland. His growth has been something that I've been following really closely, and I think this season, just understanding the comfort of, all right, it's him and it's Donovan in that backcourt, and you got a couple of 7-footers in front of you as well. You got this team, go play your best version of basketball. You're not worried about your contract. You've already gotten your bag. You're set. Just go play basketball, and that's what he's doing. He's actually also healthy because he's been dealing with some injuries over the past couple of years. Some really unfortunate ones, like, for instance, breaking your jaw. That's like an injury where you're just like, oh my God. And it really sucked for him because he lost so much weight after surgery because he couldn't really eat. He wasn't able to chew, so he was, drinking everything from a small straw. It was like all smoothie. So he's not really getting all the carbs and calorie intake that he needed, and he was so underweight for a lot of last season. This season, I'm hoping, knock on wood, he doesn't break his jaw again or doesn't have a freak injury like that. And he gets hit in the face a lot, which is really sucks. A couple of years ago, he got poked in the eye. He was eye puffed up. He was out for a couple of weeks after the first game against Toronto. It was like in the second quarter. It was really horrible, but hasn't happened yet. So that's obviously a big sign. But you got a great roster in Cleveland, and I think that they're playing some great basketball. And they just got to take it every single game and put their hearts out and just keep to what they're doing and playing the right brand of basketball, fluid offense, great defense, and just timely things. I think Ty Jerome has been a great backup point guard. He, last season only played a couple of games because he was out with an injury as well, and he's really looking like a great backup point guard. So I'm really thrilled to see, where the season goes. It's only been, obviously a couple of weeks. A lot's going to happen. They're not going to be undefeated for the whole season. If they were, that would be something else to discuss. I mean, that might be one of the most craziest things to ever happen in any sport. If a team went 82-0 in basketball,
That'd be nuts.
truly, it would be. I mean, I don't even know where to begin with that. But let's talk a little bit about them Thunder. I mean, damn, 8-0. I'm sorry, 7-0, but they are shining with a capital S and a capital G and a capital A. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, what a stud. I think he's the best shooting guard in basketball, and that's coming from a guy who's got, arguably a top 3 shooting guard in basketball. But I think Shai, what he does on both ends of the court, it just can't be, it can't be taken for granted. And you could say Anthony Edwards, and I think Anthony Edwards is an incredible basketball player, and I think he's the second best shooting guard in basketball right now, maybe tied with Donovan Mitchell. But I think what he's doing with that Thunder team. I mean, you look at it: Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren. He's stud. I've been watching a lot of Thunder games this season. I've been seeing he's put on a little bit more muscle. He's a little bit a little bit bulkier. Not exactly where he should be, but he's trending in that direction. That in a couple of years, if he puts on a little bit more, Chet Holmgren is going to be a very, very difficult player to stop. And he's putting up about 17 and 9. But you have your guy who's just facilitating to Jalen Williams. And like you said, when you get, Hartenstein back, he's going to be a huge presence in the paint. This Thunder team is just so fluid on both ends of the court, and they play such a great brand of basketball. They got a tough one against Denver tonight, but they also beat Denver by 15 points on the opening night. So, this one, I think it's going to be a good game to watch. I think Denver is not nearly what they were. They don't have the depth. I could easily see Thunder taking the series from them this season, winning again tonight, going 8-0. And then Cavs are also playing tonight as well, seeing where they end up landing. But in terms of what's happening in the West specifically, when we did this predictions and we did our playoffs, I had the Timberwolves winning the West and heading to the finals and losing ultimately to the Celtics. But what I'm seeing here is that they obviously need a grace period, the Timberwolves at least, because of making such a late trade. that, adding Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo a week
Of
before the
course.
season starts, you got to figure things out. And I really didn't take that into consideration um, when we did that originally. The truth is, it's needed. The same thing's happening with the Knicks with Karl Anthony Towns. I think the Timberwolves are a fantastic team. I think they're going to be the team that's going to give the Thunder the most trouble, if any trouble, because of how great of a team they are. Also on both ends of the court, they have a great shooting guard and Anthony Edwards. They have big men and Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle who stretches the court and Dante DiVincenzo. And they have a bunch of really good players there too. But I think ultimately, when you look at the brand of basketball, I think the Thunder are just playing a better brand of basketball so far. Where I expect that in a series, I would take the team who plays the better brand of basketball over the guys who have the talent. Because if you're able to play smoothly together, you're not going to be able to be beat. It doesn't matter. The talent's not going to be nearly as important. And that's why it's a great saying, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard enough. The Thunder work hard.
Hmm.
They might not have the flashiest guys other than Shea and Chet. Jalen Williams is definitely making a name for himself. He's a very good basketball player. But it's because how great they play together collectively as a team that just shows you how dominant they're going to be in this West. Maybe you have the Suns who are 6-1, who are playing good basketball, and they have the three-headed monster and Beal, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant. But they don't really scare me though, to be honest with you. I don't see the same version of Kevin Durant that we've known. Obviously, there's gonna be times where he attacks you, but I was watching games where even against a team like Portland, who's one of the worst teams in the West, Kevin Durant went real silent in the second half. Had like 7 points when Portland was making a comeback in that second half, and they were really trimming the lead down. Kevin Durant he didn't score in the fourth quarter. Actually, he scored 7 points in the third, didn't score in the fourth quarter. You can't have that
Hmm.
from your best player on the court. That's just not, especially when the other team's making a run. So if
Yeah.
that's what we're expecting to see from a Phoenix Suns team who obviously didn't have it last season, who are playing well right now for the start of the season, but when those problems start adding up, that's ultimately why you don't win the series and why you're not able to advance to the next round. The Thunder have really minimalized their mistakes and they really play a very close to perfect brand of basketball. And that's why I think ultimately their success is going to lead them very far in the playoffs and potentially reaching the finals and winning it all. They have a great team, so it'll be fun if our teams end up. We've said it from a young age that if our teams ever make it, we'll do our best to be able to go. They're playing a couple of times this season coming up in January 8th, and January 16th. Thunder and Cavs play those games. We'll definitely be watching and keeping close tabs on. But NBA season just kicked off. We have so much more to cover. But this was something cool. I kind of delved into your team. You delved into my team, different conferences, and kind of gave
Yeah.
our insights on what we expect to see from, two strong teams who have been playing some great basketball. They're playing again tonight. And by the time, we shoot next week, I'm going to expect both teams are going to have a loss, but it's also not impossible for them to just win, until next week, but they're going to lose eventually. I'm not
Oh, I
going
thought
to.
you were saying by the time we were like they see the episode. By the time we record,
Oh,
yeah,
no,
I
no,
mean,
no. By the time we go live, we'll still be undefeated, right? Short term, we keep
yeah,
the let's go. But in the long term, we're realistic and realize that there's no way they're going to go
yeah.
undefeated. They're going to win today. They're going to win tomorrow. They're going to win the next game. But let's look at the big picture. It's probably not likely.
Golden State has the Cavs and the Thunder back to back. I don't know if any team's had that yet, so that should be interesting. See how Steve Kerr adapts from the Thunder,
They're playing some good
adapts
basketball
from
too right now, but I don't expect that to last very long.
yeah, me either. And the Cavs to play the Thunder in the finals is plus 3,300.
I might have to sprinkle a little $10 wager on that one when I get home. Gonna have to check
Pay
that one
for our
out. That would be nice.
we do that, we could pay for our ticket with it.
That's good. Well, I would make a dent towards it at least. But anyways, let's get off from NBA. Let's quickly wrap up with some college. Basketball is back in college. We've had
I love college
some
basketball.
great games that have happened this past Monday, which was the tip-off for college basketball. We have some more games coming up this weekend. Um, Obviously, one of the key matchups that we're going to have seeing this weekend on Friday, we're going to have a huge one. That's going to be Kansas versus UNC, 1 seed versus the 9 seed. Two juggernaut programs going at it, and it'll be a fun one. Whoever comes out on top are probably going to be Kansas. They're the 1 seed, and they're a fantastic team. So I don't think
Yeah.
they're going to lose to UNC, but if they did, it wouldn't be all too surprising. There's another game too, right, Josh, on Saturday? What's that big one on Saturday?
Yeah, you got Auburn taking on Houston.
That's right.
I think that we both look at Houston as a team that can do some serious damage, and I don't really think either of us ever talked about Auburn as a team that's a championship threat. They're a number 11 team. They're legit. They have talent, but I think that maybe the voters think a little bit more about them than we did. I mean, I don't think we ignored them completely, but I don't think that we put them in the conversation. So I would expect Houston to take that one, especially at home. Auburn starts their season tonight at home against Vermont, and then they go to Houston on Saturday. Should be a good one. And the first, Harry, why don't we begin telling about the?
Well, before we do that, usually the way I think about when I think about college Auburn, I think about them returning a 102-yard touchdown to beat Alabama a few years back. That's when I think
about Cam Newton.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think about. I don't think about college Auburn basketball, but they're a good team, and they're playing Saturday against Houston. But like you said, I think Houston, very great program too. Of late, they've really taken off. I think, especially number 4 seed, I think they got this one.
I think so too.
Ben, clip time. We got a good one too. This was from last game. I mean,
Gonzaga
Josh,
and Baylor squared off.
You brought this to my attention, so why don't you let the world know what this video kind of entails? Just give a little quick briefing.
So we had Gonzaga number 6 playing Baylor number 8, and Gonzaga wins 101-63 in the only ranked unranked matchup so far of this year. And Mark Few decides, okay, this game's out of hand. Let's get my son in the game.
Mark Few, head coach, by the way, of Gonzaga.
Yeah. And then from there, we will go to the clip.
Do you guys want it full screen or do you want all of our faces on it?
Well, Ben has not seen the video, so I want to see your reaction to this.
All right, so then so explain to me again. It's his son. You played his.
It's garbage time. Gonzaga's blowing them out. The head coach, who is Mark Few, said, I'm going to put my son Joe Few in the game to get some minutes in there. And this is what happened in a blowout game.
Okay.
I'm confident he's good enough to be on the roster. Like, I wouldn't take that away from him.
I'm confident enough he's going to need therapy after what we're about to see.
All right, here we go.
Might blow the roof off this place if Joe Few scores. And a steal for Joshua Jonwinna. VJ Edgecombe, my goodness. That staggered Joe Few.
And Ben, he just checked in 10 seconds.
Welcome to the game, Joe. Welcome to the game.
Yee. But at this,
that's tough. You know what though?
I could never go back on. Look at his teammate. His hands are in the. It's like, oh my God, you're getting blown out. You're getting blown out. But when you get something like that happening, all the eyes are going to be on. Nobody's looking at Gonzaga's blowout.
Go ahead. Yeah.
A steal for Joshua Jonwinna.
With a score like that.
VJ Edgecombe, my goodness.
VJ Edgecombe. Remember that name, VJ Edgecombe. Whoa.
Wow, I love that. He just ooh.
You know that little anime with the thing they do where it's like the guy dunks on him and then the guy falls into like his grave and then the tombstone comes up. They should do that too, because that's exactly what happened. He should.
Can we say one thing?
Yeah.
Can we say one thing about this game though? I mean, VJ Edgecombe's stat line for the game: 2 of 11 shooting, 4 points.
Terrible.
7 rebounds, 2 blocks. So,
terrible.
I mean, sure, maybe he was letting a little frustration out. First game of the year, I'm sure Coach True will coach him up and say, that point in the game, maybe just lay it up, take the points. But you know what? They got to go viral.
No way.
By 40.
You got to dunk that every single time. Just
I'm not saying
make your name. Do it, baby. That was sick. That was great.
I'm not saying he wouldn't do it, and I'm not saying I'm against the play, but I'm saying as a coach, you're definitely sitting him down, like, bruh, like. I would have enjoyed that way more if it was in front of our home crowd and against one of the terrible teams that we play later in the year.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I mean, that was a blowout for Baylor. Let's see where they end up falling in the ranking status, because this one probably set them back a little bit. But I'm certain they'll get back on track. They're a good organization overall. And when they got guys like this who can high fly like that, it'll be a lot of fun. But I wanted to thank you guys. Sorry, you got something to say?
Nah, you're good. I was just saying
you got something to say? Huh? Say it to my face.
They get to play John Calipari's Arkansas next game, so they could save the ranking a little bit if they could pull that.
Isn't that weird to say that?
To start.
John Calipari's Arkansas. How could you even think about it like that? That's like the weird. Like, I feel weird just thinking about that. That's weird.
I feel weird about it too, but you know what? He made the move. So
yeah, well, it's true. He also secured the bag. But anyways, really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to a really great episode over here. We're going to bring you guys a lot more updates coming forward. Tune into our Instagram because we're going to bring you guys some new stuff coming to Instagram. It's going to change the whole entire thing around. Beyond the Score podcast, we're going to be taking the next step, Anyways, thank you guys so much. Matt, thank you again for tuning in for such great questions you give us on a weekly basis. And you can follow us on all these different things that Josh is about to tell you where you can watch us.
Yeah, you can watch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And Matt, we love your questions. Keep them coming. Also, I see your commitment to the show. Let's bring a rally. Let's bring some people to it. Let's get them on. Let's see if they can challenge you on your questions once we post the result of it.
We'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. And let's not forget, best part of our show, our famous Yogi-isms. You tell the stupidest questions. Unbelievable, this guy says the silliest things.
I thought you were passionately saying that about him. So,
well, you could say that about him, but he says that to other people, which makes him one of the most amazing athletes to have ever played this game.
I fully agree.
We love you, Yogi. Thank you so much for giving us these Yogi-isms every week. And thank you guys again so much for tuning in to Beyond the Score podcast. We will see you guys next week. See you for now.